Hey guys, welcome back to the subdivision modeling training series for Cinema 4D. In this lesson, this is what we're going to be modeling right here. This is something that I saw not long ago, so I figured I'd have a try at it and eventually made a tutorial out of it. So stick around and maybe we'll learn something new. Alright, so there are several ways to do this, and as most of us know, whenever you're working in 3D, there are different ways of creating the same thing. So I'm going to show you one way here we can do this. So I'm going to go into a front view, and I'm going to grab a polygon object, and we need to change the orientation, and I need to rotate it. So I'm just going to rotate it in the B value 45 degrees, and we'll make that editable. And we need to go into point mode, grab the knife tool, and I'm just going to connect, or I'm going to create the line there, the cut from the top to the bottom and from side to side. Now I know we're creating triangles, but don't worry because those are going to be solved later. So I want to take this center point and I want to pull that out. And just, this depends on how far you want your point to go out. I'm going to pull it to about, I think right there will be okay. So we'll go back to the front view, and what I want to do is I want to duplicate this. So I'm going to duplicate it, bring it down, and we want to turn on snapping. So we'll turn snapping on. But the issue that I'm having with snapping, and maybe some of you guys know how to solve this, is that I want to be able to snap this edge here to the edge of this polygon object up here. But no matter what I enabled or disabled in the snap settings, I couldn't get it to snap. You see, there's no snapping there. So what I had to do was go into the enable axis mode here, and we want to make sure you got edge snap turned on. And I'm just going to snap that to that edge, turn that off, and now it can snap to the edge. So I'm guessing the snap tool or the snap feature here in Cinema 4D, it requires that the axis handle be on the actual point or edge in order to snap it to the edge of another object. All right, so we would turn that back on and we want to bring this down to that edge right there. That looks good. See, everything's lining up. So what we want to do now is we want to duplicate this one again. I need to turn that off. So we'll duplicate it, and I just want to rotate this down to -45 degrees. And now we can duplicate this one again, and we want to turn, snapping is still on, and I just want to bring that one down to there. So I'm just control clicking and dragging down, and down again. And we'll go one more. All right, so that looks pretty good. So we want to select all of these objects and make them into one. So I'm using the connect objects plus delete command, but they're not welded. So we need to go into point mode and we need to weld all of those together. So now it's one object, all the points are welded together. And we want to pull this up. So I'm just going to take that up so it sits up above the grid. All right, so we want to go into point mode and we want to delete the top point as well as the bottom point. So we want to click on, you want to click on your object, hold down Alt, and want to get the MoGraph cloner. And you can see by doing that, what's happening is the axis handle needs to be changed. So I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to go over here to enable axis, and I'm going to rotate this 45 degrees. You can see down here it just needs to be set to -90. Hit apply. That will take us where we need to go. Now the axis handle is correctly oriented, or actually it's not. Y is actually pointing to the side, but that's okay. Go back over to the cloner, and we need to change the values here to X instead of Y. We want to push it, actually no, it was in the right direction. We need to go back over here to Y. And we want to line these up. And you can see it's not going to be an exact number, so let's pull that one in. And then zero out the X value. All right, so I'm going to give this a count of 35. All right, and we'll make that editable. Now we want to select all of these objects. Use the connect objects plus delete command again. Go into point mode, and we just want to weld all those by using the optimize command to weld all those points together. So now we want to put this inside of a bin deformer. Now sometimes the bin deformer can be a little tricky because I don't really use it all that much. But in the cases when I do, I get confused with it because it's always oriented in the wrong direction and it's always bending incorrectly. So let's create a bin deformer. And we need to position this bin deformer correctly. And usually what I like to do, and I need to turn off snapping. If we just raise this up for a moment, if we use the strength value here, you can see it's bending that way, so it's kind of oriented wrong at the moment, so we need to take it and flip it over this way. Okay, so I think that will be correct, and we'll pull it down. Let's put it there in the middle. Scale it down a little bit. And that's going to need to be scaled up so it fits around. All right, and we need to go over here and scale this up in this direction. Like that. Now we'll make it a child of the polygon object. Now if we use the strength value, okay, it's still not oriented correctly. All right, so as you can see, I did this wrong. So let's take the bin deformer, and I believe it just needs to be rotated. That's the wrong way. It needs to be rotated this way, I believe. And I wish there was a command that would work to where you could select your object and then apply the bin deformer, and it would automatically fit the dimensions of your object to bend it whichever way you choose. And I don't think Cinema 4D has that feature. I was looking for it, but I couldn't find it. So you have to do this manually unless there is a hidden feature that I don't know about. So now we just need to scale this to fit the object once again. All right, now let's try to bend it one more time. There it goes. Now we got it the right way. All right, so let's go over here to a front view and let's take the strength up. Now notice that the strength is going beyond 360. And more than likely, 360 should have been the correct amount. But I've noticed that depending on what you're trying to create, sometimes it will be more than that. And more than likely, it's probably because we scaled the deformer beyond the dimensions of the object. But that's okay. Scale that up. So let's try 369.5. Whoop. All right, not quite. So we'll go 0.6, 6.2. All right, that looks pretty good. So now what we need to do is we need to select the polygon object, right click on it and choose current state to object. Now we can hide this with the bin deformer, and now here's our polygon object. Go into point mode, and let's see if we can weld by doing the optimize, and that's good. Now, if you optimize, you use the optimize command and it doesn't work, what you'll need to do is right click, go to the optimize. You see this little black gear here. So if you click on that, it'll bring up more additional options for the optimize command. And the tolerance by default, I believe, is set to 0.001, I think. Maybe it's 0.1. But you may have to increase this slowly. Don't make huge increments in this when you go to adjust it. Start out slow. Otherwise, you could weld a bunch of points that you don't want welded. So I had to set this to 0.5 in order to work a little more, a little better with this. All right, so if we apply a hypernerve object, or I'm used to calling it a hypernerve, but it's now called subdivision surface. If we apply that to that, you can see that it's actually smoothing it out way too much. So what we need to do is make some beveling. So let's turn that off. And what I'm going to do is go into edge mode, and I'm going to hit Control A to select all of the edges. Now there's two ways of doing this, and I'm going to show you both ways. The default bevel tool that C4D has, if you select that, by default it's set to chamfer. And the subdivision, we want to keep that at 0. So if we zoom in here to, let's say right there, and you click and drag to bevel, it's creating somewhat quads for us, but you can see here in the middle, it's creating this circle here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8 sides and it's even. And I mean, it's not really a big deal. This will work just fine for what we want to do. However, in a previous tutorial, I showed you the solid chamfer plugin, which I absolutely fell in love with back in the days of R13. So I'm going to undo this, and I'm going to use the solid chamfer. I'm going to keep the subdivisions at 0, and we'll go back in and do the same thing we did before. Now notice it creates a different pattern. These are all quads. Everything is a quad here. It's not creating that octagon shape in the middle. So how do we do this with the bevel tool, or the default bevel tool that C4D has? Well, you just need to go and set the bevel mode to solid, and then click and drag, and it's creating the same pattern. So both of these tools do the same thing. It's just that you have to change the bevel mode from chamfer to solid. All right, so if we turn the hypernerve back on, and I'll just use the solid chamfer, it does the same thing. I've just become used to using it. And I'm going to click and drag, maybe something like there. Now there is our pattern. Now, I'm sure you're probably thinking, but weren't those a bunch of triangles? Well, yeah, they were a bunch of triangles. But since we used this tool, it created a bunch of quads, even though we have these triangles here in the middle. But as soon as we turn the subdivision surface object back on, and you can click on it, and I'll take the value down to 1. Notice that all of these now are quads. There's no triangles in there. I can't really seem to find any triangles. All of them are quads. So that took care of the issue for us of dealing with those triangles, even though in this case, those triangles really were not causing a problem. It's not a big deal. So I think that looks pretty good right there. Now we just want to create a cap on the top. I'm not going to worry about doing the bottom. You can create one on the bottom in your own time if you want. So I'm going to go over into edge mode, and I'm going to use the loop selection for the top. Okay, so let's select boundary loop. That should give us the top. And what I want to do is I want to extrude this up to about there. And then I want to make another extrusion up to about there. And this one here, I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to hit the point mode button there. And when you do that, whatever edges you have selected, it will automatically select those points when you change modes. So notice at the top of this object here, we have all of those points selected. So if I hold down Shift and select edge mode, it now selects all those edges, but notice it's also selecting these here now. So one more time, if I select that top loop of edges, hold down Shift, go into point mode, it selects those points. So that makes it a whole lot easier rather than having to go back and select all those points again. So now we want to make these circular because right now you can see they're jagged. So to do that, you can go back to a previous tutorial that I had, which I'll put the download link in the description to this video just in case you guys don't already have it. But I'm going to be using the points to circle script. And you can get to that by going to scripts, user scripts, points to circle. And you can see by default, it kind of took them into the middle. So we just need to scale them out. And this just depends on how far you want to scale them out. I would rather have these sitting somewhere about there. So it's just kind of straight up right there. Okay, now from here, go back to edge mode. And I'm going to extrude those up, extrude in, and maybe we'll just do something like that. All right, that's fine for now. So if we turn the hypernerve, I'm so used to calling it that, if we turn that back on, okay, there's a little bit of an issue there. We just need to add some adjusting edges. So you'll notice that also these edges here, they're kind of like shifted over to the right. Notice how everything is kind of like twisted over to the right. So we can just clean that up by selecting that row of edges there, which I already had selected. And we'll use the rotate tool and we'll just rotate these to something like there. Probably go a little bit more. All right, so looks a little better. Grab the knife tool, and we'll go into loop mode. We'll add one there, up there, one there, and two there. And there you go. So I'm not really quite sure what this object is. I'm not really sure. I know that this kind of, this diamond pattern, I saw this the other day. I don't remember what it was on, but I wanted to try to recreate it. So of course you can take this object if you wanted to. You can put a cap on the bottom, or you could just take and duplicate that, bring it down, rotate it over. Oh, we'll need to recenter the axis in the center if you wanted to do that. But there you go. That's one way of doing it. I'm sure some of you probably already have a method in your head that you're thinking of that you would want to use if you were creating this type of diamond pattern. All right, so I think that about wraps up this tutorial. Not exactly the most difficult thing to do, although like I said, the snapping feature was a little confusing at first. I was really hoping that there would have been a way to take an object and snap its edges to the edges of another object without actually having to move the axis handle to the edge. All right, so hopefully I'll have some more of these modeling tutorials coming soon. Usually just during the day when I'm doing other things, sometimes my eye will catch an object and I'll see it and try to take some pictures of it. And then once I come back home, I usually try to model it. And if it's something interesting like this, then usually I'll try to make a tutorial out of it. All right, guys, so I think that about wraps it up. Thank you for watching. And as always, I will see you guys in the next tutorial.